Peace, y'all. I'm Rob Evans, and this is Just Curious with the questions of the compass. All right, season 2, we've been hanging out with the cluster of ideas around service, joy, and awe. I'll talk about what service means, what we hope it means for the people closest to us, and the folks who've modeled service before us. Talked about this in the context of the ways in which joy and awe sneak up on you sometimes when you're just trying to do the right thing on a regular Tuesday. So today I just want to add one more thread to that cluster of questions that we've been wrestling with so far. And it's, for this question, the episode, the guiding question is, how far can a small kindness go in an unsteady world? And just so we're clear, I'm not talking about the big historic Nobel Prize level gestures. I'm talking about tiny things like a word, a smile, a bit of courage and encouragement, some curiosity where everything and everyone else seems to be choosing content. Because if you haven't noticed, our world is kind of wobbly right now. Our institutions, our politics, our feeds, our conversations, even at the dinner table. And in season 1, I had an episode asking you what you're consuming and what's consuming you. And I just want to let you know I'm continuing to consume. So I'm pulling together some other things that I've been consuming in the last few weeks that have been rattling around in my head. And that includes a TV show, a documentary, some comic books that I picked up, a blog post that I wrote, and even a Summer Institute for Young Men, an info session. And all of them have left me with nuggets or morsels that have contributed to this ongoing question and conversation in my head. So they helped me think about, and they forced me to think about small kindness and what it means to offer those to people, especially in the world that we live in now, where it can feel like we're walking alone. Brutal politics, betrayal, everybody out for themselves. There's this sense that if you're going to survive, you better armor up, trust no one, and accept that you're fundamentally alone. And I'll be honest, that idea hit me harder than it probably should have, because there have been seasons in my own life, maybe yours too, where that's exactly how it's felt, like you're alone. You do what you believe is the right thing. You try to serve well, love well, lead well. You hold your integrity when it'll be easier to go along. And sometimes the reward for all of that is not applause, not understanding, it's isolation. You're no longer in that role, or you lose a community, or you lose the people you thought would stick with you. And you find yourself thinking, dang, maybe I do walk through this world alone. So when I think about that Game of Thrones show, the idea, of walking alone, I hear my own shadow whispering back at me. But here's the thing, that story, that lone hero, that lone wolf, the lone genius, I think all of that's a lie that we've been sold over and over and over until we believe it. It's not that some people don't feel alone. They do, and they feel it deeply. It's that we were never meant to walk this world completely alone. And some of the most powerful moments in my life have come from the smallest acts of kindness breaking through that isolation. Whether that's a text message, a check-in, a, hey, I see you, or guess what, you're not crazy. Those tiny moves can have enormous impact. So I'm watching these episodes that are essentially telling me we need to walk through the world alone. And I'm also asking, where are those small kindnesses? And you begin to see them. Where are those choices that say you don't have to do this part by yourself? So again, don't want to give any spoilers, but if you are watching the show and you think, it's resonating with you, what I'm putting down, I'd love to hear from you about it. But as I pivot from, or zoom out from the fantasy world to our very own United States in 2026, I just want to say, man, we're not doing great on the basic respect and civility scoreboard. We're loud, we're polarized, we're quick to judge, we're slow to listen. You can feel it everywhere, on social media, in school board meetings, in profit boardrooms, in conversation that folks are having around race, gender, the books that we read, history, elections, you name it, it's there. This lack of civility and basic respect. And when I've talked to school heads, nonprofit leaders, and board chairs, a lot of them are asking some version of the same question. How do I lead in this mess without losing my mind, my health, and my soul? Right? They're supposed to be serving communities where people don't feel, so serving communities where people don't even agree on basic facts. They're supposed to be the adults in rooms that feel like Twitter threads have come to life. It's not hard to imagine how that leads them back to the same walk this world alone feeling. But here's what I'm starting to wonder. If the big debates are stuck, if the hot takes are entrenched, maybe one of the most radical things we can do is practice small kindness at a scale of our own actual lives. Not because it's cute or nice, but because it might be the only bridges we have left. Holding the door for someone who looks like they voted the exact opposite of you, or choosing to ask one more curious question instead of firing back your point. Sending a note to a teacher, a nurse, a bus driver, a pastor, a coach, a neighbor, somebody, just anybody trying to hold a little corner of the world together, showing niceness. Those things won't fix the structural problems that we're talking about, the injustices themselves, but they do something very powerful. They remind us and them that beneath all the algorithms and the arguments, we're still human beings sharing the same air. And that is not nothing. Right? That's everything. Another input that I consumed in the last couple of weeks was Unforgivable Blackness, a documentary by Ken Burns on Jack Johnson. It's really good. And Jack Johnson, for the folks that don't know, is the first Black heavyweight boxing champion of the world. And of course, knowing that that's the backdrop, his story is complicated. He's a brilliant fighter, a bold personality, and he lived unapologetically in a white supremacist society that wanted him small, quiet, and just grateful. He walked through the world that was openly hostile to his very existence, the law, the media, and the streets. In one sense, he did walk this world alone. There were things only he could carry, only he could decide, only he could endure. But he wasn't actually alone. He was held up and held down by systems, by crowds, by community, by enemies, by people who loved him and people who hated the idea of him. What struck me watching the documentary is the agency and his refusal to shrink and the cost of that refusal, because it did cost. Jack Johnson was not a small kindness story. His was living your full self in a world that punishes you for that kind of story. But alongside all of that, I keep thinking about the everyday Black folks in his era, the people who got up, went to work, raised their kids, tried to stay alive and sane, and created little pockets of joy and art and service in a country that saw them as ultimately as expendable. And still sees them as expendable. They weren't on posters, they weren't in the ring, but their small kindnesses, their service to each other, are part of why any of us are here still fighting, still loving, still insisting on our humanity. So as I think about Jack Johnson walking uncompromisingly through a hostile world, I'm also thinking about, well, what does it look like to walk with that kind of agency and still be tender enough to offer and receive small kindnesses? And that's a hard balance. But it feels essential in this moment, especially if you're trying to do any type of work related to social justice without losing your joy. I've been writing about this in a blog post that I call Staying Humanity in Unsteady Times, where essentially I argue that curiosity might be one of the best tools we need to remain human. It doesn't mean you let injustice slide. It means you're willing to ask, what's really going on here? What fears underneath that reaction? What story is that person carrying? What story am I carrying? And I'm not just writing about it. I actually had an opportunity this past weekend with my partner in crime, my life partner, Chena. We led a workshop together at a conference on the topic about what does it mean to stay human in education, and specifically related to independent schools when everything feels unstable. I wanted to explore how educators show up with boundaries and compassion. How do we hold students' full humanity when the world is yelling at them and at us to pick a side and perform a role? And how do we practice curiosity in rooms that are primed for conflict? Because here's the link I'm feeling between curiosity and small kindness. A lot of the tiny healing acts we remember from our own lives are somebody asking us one more question, somebody really listening, somebody refusing to reduce us to a stereotype or a mistake. Those are small kindnesses driven by curiosity. And if we're serious about service, joy, and awe, we can't just be curious about ideas. We have to be curious about people. What I love, though, is that the best versions of these stories quietly undermine that lone hero myth. Batman has the Bat family with Robin, Nightwing, Batgirl, Alfred, all of these people who refuse to let him sink entirely into darkness. Superman has Lois, the Kents, the Justice League, a whole found family of people who remind him he doesn't have to save the world on their own. Even our giant, overpowered fictional heroes need small kindnesses, honest friendships, people who make them eat and sleep and laugh. If Superman needs that, if Batman needs that, I promise you, I know I do, and I'm guessing you do too. Our service can't be sustained on walk this world alone energy. We'll either collapse or harden us. All right. The thing that makes service beautiful, that gives it its flavor of joy and awe, is often the people who walk this world with us. One of those places where I've seen that most clearly recently was at an info session I attended for Reach Academy for Young Men. Shout out to Nat Damon, the founder and executive director, Tim Whiteman, the institute director, and all of the folks investing in that place. And the families investing their hope there. In a world that feels hypermasculine, where boys are often taught some version of don't feel, don't cry, don't need anyone, walk this world alone. Reach Academy is trying to do something different and trying to create an experience for boys that is relational, emotionally honest, and rooted in full humanity, not limited by narrow ideas of what it means to be a real man in 2026. When I think about service, joy, and honor, I see all three in that work. Service in the adults giving their time, expertise, and love. Joy in the boys being allowed to be goofy, thoughtful, scared, excited, all of it. Awe in the possibility that these young men will walk into adulthood with a wider script for our manhood than many of us were given. And again, so much of that rests on small kindnesses. A teacher noticing a kid who's extra quiet that day, a staff member pulling a boy aside saying, "Hey, I see leadership in you." A parent choosing this environment because they want their son to have room to be fully human. None of that happens. None of that will trend on Twitter, but it will ripple through generations. So let me try to gather these threads. The fantasy world that says, walk this world alone, a real country that feels like it's forgetting how to talk to itself. Superman and Batman learning that even heroes need friends, and an institute for boys trying to expand what manhood can be. Underneath all of that, the same question echoes: how far can a small kindness go in an unsteady world? So here's where I land today. Small kindness doesn't fix everything. It doesn't erase injustice. It doesn't settle every argument. It doesn't take away the need for policy, protest, or structural change. But small kindness does interrupt the story that you walk this world completely alone. It does remind someone that they are seen, still human, still worth gentle word. It creates tiny pockets of joy and awe in places that are otherwise all anxiety and anger sometimes. And it gives you and me evidence that service can be tender and sustainable, not just sacrificial and exhausting. Service at its best is not just what we pour out. It's also the ways we tend to the human beings in front of us, including ourselves. Joy and awe are often hidden in the small, unremarkable moments. So whether that's a boy at Reach Academy feeling safe enough to ask a real question, or a leader getting supportive text after a brutal meeting, a stranger holding the door when you feel invisible, or a friend sending you a podcast they think will bless you. Those moments won't make headlines, but they make lives. So as we close this episode, I want to leave you with a few questions to carry into your week. Where in your own life do you feel this walk, this world alone energy right now? Is it work? Is it your family? Is it even in your health? Do you see it in your news feed? Wherever it is, name it, call it out. Question 2, where have you already experienced the power of a small kindness? A moment where someone's simple act, a word, gesture, or a bit of curiosity landed in your life way heavier than they probably realize. They probably will ever realize. And then the third question is, what is one small kindness you can offer this week that might ripple farther than you think? Not because you're trying to be a hero, but because you're choosing to participate in service, joy, and awe at the scale at which you actually live. And then there's one more question: 4, how might you allow yourself to receive small kindnesses, not just give it? And that's, for me, something that I'm constantly working on, because you don't walk this world alone either. And the leisure of your life includes how you let others love you. So thank you for staying with me through this wandering, geeky, history-soaked, school nerd meditation. Thank you for the small kindness of your attention, for listening. We'll pick this back up next time with more stories and more questions. Until then, take care of yourself, take care of each other, and remember, the questions are the compass. Peace, y'all.